Alright, you clicked the thing, get it out of your system, go ahead and put the rack jokes in the comments, and I'll pin the funniest one. Hello friends, Dimitri here again. Every time we have guests over, they take one look at my server rack, and I can immediately see them judging me. Oh, Mr. Big Computer Nerd over here likes to show off his toys. I mean, I do, but that's not the point. Today, I want to show you what I have in my rack, how it all came to be, what I'm using it for, and at least attempt to justify it. I'm not gonna get too deep into the weeds about the specifics in this video, but do let me know in the comments if you'd like me to do a deep dive into any of the servers I'm about to show you. First off, nobody just decides to buy a rack for their home right off the bat. Even if you're opening up a small business, your money will be better spent elsewhere. That first server will work just fine sitting on a desk or in the closet. It's only when you add a third or fourth server plus some networking stuff and that pile begins to get dangerously wobbly should you even consider organizing that mess in a rack. That's exactly how it got started for me. Ever since me and my wife first started dating, I had some sort of camera on me. I took a ton of photos and videos on vacation and kept them on external hard drives thrown all over my desk. I also kept a bunch of other media on those hard drives. For example, I ripped my entire music CD library to MP3 files because it could fit on a single 5GB iPod as opposed to keeping the CD trays on folders. For similar reasons, I ripped our entire DVD collection to video files too. All of those files were quite large, requiring more and larger hard drives. It was working fine, until it didn't. One of those external hard drives failed, and it was the one with all of our family photos and videos in it. I was devastated. All those memories were irreplaceable. Thankfully, I was able to get them back by sending the drive to a data recovery company. It cost us close to $1,500, which back in the early 2000s was a lot of money for a young couple just starting out. It was an expensive lesson for me to keep backups of all of my important files. Having a second copy of your data is only the first step towards a true peace of mind, but it's an important one. Some people use online cloud services for backing up their data, such as Google Drive, Apple iCloud, Microsoft OneDrive, the list goes on. But as you know, the cloud is just somebody else's computer. Every time you upload something, you're trading your privacy for convenience. Not to mention that these services give you a very limited amount of storage for free. It doesn't take long to go over that limit and into their paid tiers. That is when I was first introduced to a concept of a NAS, Network Attached Storage. Network Attached Storage. A NAS is a fancy name for a bunch of hard disk drives strung together and hooked up to your home network in such a way that they can be accessed by other computers on that same network. One of the uses of a NAS is backing up your important files to it so that when your main computer inevitably to bed, you at least have a copy of your data safely tucked away. I originally went with a 4-disk NAS from a company called Synology. These days there are many companies with similar products. QNAP, Drobo, D-Link, Ugreen, the list goes on. These devices are great for accessing files over the network, and they also have different apps that you can run. They can even run business applications like an email server. They're not cheap though. Just the empty enclosure by itself usually goes for around $500. They do provide a lot of convenience. A compact, quiet little box that doesn't take much space on a desk, with great software features and technical support should something go wrong. But the moment you look under the hood at the hardware inside one of them, you begin to question those prices. NASs are usually built with a very low-powered CPU that is at least 5 years behind what's available on the consumer market. They come with unbelievably low amount of system memory, like 2 GB at most, and they have very limited expansion capabilities. There's just no way all of those cool and useful apps could run on this little thing simultaneously. If you do require something with more oomph, the prices begin to creep up to $800 mark and more. For that kind of money, you could put together a brand new gaming PC that would blow one of these NASs out of the water. Of course, in order to build that PC, you'd have to order the parts separately, put them together yourself, but still, that's an awful lot of markup just for convenience. To some people, that convenience is worth it. On one hand, you have a turnkey, off-the-shelf solution from a single manufacturer, and on the other hand, a DIY project with warranties from 10 different firms. It's all about priorities. I've always been a tinkerer, so once my NAS model was deemed too old to support by Synology, I built my own PC to replace it. This time I did a lot of research. I knew I wanted this machine to be more than just glorified hard disk holder. I wanted to run an automated backup solution, and a media server, and an ad blocker, and maybe even host a game server or 3. Armed with some advice from a Discord server that I frequent, shout out JDM, I went with used enterprise gear. You see, when large businesses upgrade and buy new and expensive servers, they get rid of their old servers for pennies on the dollar. eBay is filled with 10-year-old server parts that used to cost thousands of dollars brand new, but now they cost a fraction of that money. I'm talking CPU, motherboards, memory, you name it. I put together a machine with 2 server-grade CPUs and a buttload of RAM for just under $250. Those decade-old CPUs still work great, and they run circles around the wimpy NAS at half of the specs. It was more than enough for running everything that I needed, and then some. Since I wasn't planning to play video games on this thing, it didn't even need an expensive video card. And that was the first box in the ever-growing equipment pile. For a long while, this computer was doing all the heavy lifting by itself. It kept my backups, it was my Plex media server, it ran ad blocking, and a bunch of other things. It did have one problem though. I kept noticing that sometimes when we streamed video from the Plex server, it would hitch and stutter. Turns out this is because some of the movie files that I ripped were not directly compatible with my TV, and they required to go through a process called transcoding. During transcoding, a video is converted so that the target device, like a Roku TV or Apple TV box, can understand and play it. This conversion requires either a graphics card or a CPU that has this specific feature called QuickSync built in. This little-known feature has been around since all the way back in 2011, and it allows for super fast and very efficient transcoding of video streams. Unfortunately, the Xeon processors that I chose for my server were too old to support it. I had several options at that point. I could buy a GPU for the server. I could pre-convert all of my video files to a format that all of my devices could play natively, or I could just buy another computer to be the media server. I quickly ruled out the first 2 options. This was 2020, smack in the middle of the pandemic, right at the peak of the crypto mining boom. GPU prices were through the roof, that is, even if you could find one for sale. Option 2 was a non-starter either, because converting all of my videos would take ages and double or even triple the size of the media library, requiring even more hard drives. So I picked up a low-cost used PC with an Intel CPU, installed Linux on it, moved my Plex server software to it, and called it a day. The video files themselves are still stored on my main file server, while this little transcoding machine would access them when necessary, convert them on the fly, and send them off to any of my devices with Plex app. And now my equipment pile grew a little bit. It was a main file server, a networking switch, the ISP modem, and now a dedicated Plex server. It stayed that way for quite a while, until I had an option to switch my internet providers. You see, my previous ISP required me to rent their modem/router at something ridiculous like $10 per month. Their modem also served as the Wi-Fi base station and the firewall. Problem is, these ISP-provided boxes are usually terrible at doing any of those things. But hey, a router is just another computer that has a single purpose, providing internet connection to your home network. The new ISP allowed me to use my own router instead of renting one from them, so it was a no-brainer. I put one together myself. The hardware cost me around $150 all in, so at $10 a month, it paid itself in a little over a year. I run pfSense software on the router PC, which gives me access to a lot more networking features. such as more granular firewall rules, separating all connected appliances to their own VLAN that isn't allowed internet access, a personal VPN, dynamic DNS, and many others. Chuck another computer onto the pile. At this point, the equipment mountain was getting quite wobbly with a rat's nest of wiring behind it. It was time to organize. I bought a small rack off of eBay for around $50. Thankfully, the main file server was already in a rack-mountable chassis, so I only had to transplant 2 of my other computers into cases that could mount in a rack. Those cost me about $50 each. But now, a new first-world problem. Managing all of these computers is becoming a chore because each needs a monitor, a keyboard, and a mouse. Enter a rack-mounted KVM switch. I found one on sale for under $100 that I could pick up locally. It was scuffed up all to hell, but hey, it worked. Now with the press of a button, I could switch between 3 of my servers with a single screen, with a keyboard and a trackpad that can be folded up and tucked away when not in use. In went the network switch, as well as some other equipment like the printer, voice over IP adapter, and the over-the-air TV tuner. Fast forward a couple of years, and time came for the big move. All of the equipment had to come along, but before that happened, I needed to figure out the Wi-Fi situation at the new house. I had a contractor run network cables from the basement, where the rack would live, to every room in a house, planning to have a wireless access point on each floor. To manage the APs, I needed a proper switch. I saw a lot of recommendations online for Ubiquiti stuff, but it was just too expensive. I ended up going with TP-Link's Omada ecosystem. A 24-port managed smart switch replaced the old dumb one, a couple of patch panels to avoid bending the cables, and I ran out of room in the little rack. I sold the old rack and found a slightly larger one on good old Facebook Marketplace. Then I added some bells and whistles like plastic rock studs instead of metal nuts and bolts, and rails to make the servers slide in and out of the rack for easier maintenance. Just don't look in the back, cable management is still a work in progress. And that is how my little NAS organically grew into a rack the height of my 12-year-old. Did I need a rack? No, not really, but it sure is helpful in keeping all of my home server stuff organized. But what, I hear you asking, is the point of all of this? What do you even do with that many servers? Well, it's a surprisingly short answer. Self-hosting. Slowly but surely, we've been conditioned to give up our privacy with promises of convenience. Is this convenience worth it? I've come to believe no. A while ago, I decided to slowly wean myself off of the reliance on online services and smart appliances that require always-on internet connectivity. How often do you hear stories about people getting locked out of their Amazon or Google accounts and losing all of their photos? How about the recent cloud service outages that wreaked havoc not only on websites, but also on connected devices like doorbells and even medical beds in hospitals? This decloudifying has been a slow process, and I still have ways to go, but I've made decent progress. I already talked about Plex Server, which allows me to watch my ripped DVDs and Blu-rays on any of my devices with a screen. For photographs, I host my own server using image software that does the same job as Google Photos or Apple's iCloud Photos, but without handing my images over to a giant corporation. I stream music that I bought off of my own server. I run my own password manager called Vault Warden. I use Home Assistant to manage my smart light bulbs and light switches. For connecting to my PCs remotely, I set up Rust Desk server instead of using something like TeamViewer. I run a network-wide ad blocking service called Pi-hole, and I run my own VPN server using OpenVPN. I have a CCTV-like security system with a bunch of cheap network cameras using Blue Iris software. I even host a Minecraft server for my kids and their friends. All of that is accessible only by me and whoever else I choose. No multi-billion-dollar corporation trains their AI models on my images. They don't get access to my security cameras and my video doorbell. They don't get to snoop on my private conversations with their always listening spy boxes. None of my so-called smart appliances ever connect to the internet. Pretty much the only thing that I'm not currently self-hosting but want to someday is email. I'm taking charge of my digital life, and so can you.